Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that great subscribe button right here, right now. Please hit that bell icon so you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. So in today's episode to discuss with you, do people really change? Do people make changes and lasting change and make it stick? But first, before we get into that, if you don't know who I am Sandra Burnley, author of this awesome Asexual Perspectives 47 Asexual Stories book and author of Fibromyalgia Self-Help Handbook. These are available on Amazon. Go and get your copies. So, yes, today's episode, do people ever really change? So this is quite a big question, right? So people are constantly changing all the time. They're changing their mind about what they want to eat. They're changing their clothes. They might change the way they walk to work. They might change their car. They might change their car insurance. They might change their home. They might change their friends. They might change a lot of stuff. But what we're really talking about in terms of change is usually to do with dating, relationships, or in the case of asexuals, more friendships. And so, do people ever really change? Well, this is usually in the context that someone's done something wrong, for example, within a relationship. The relationship is broken down. People have split up for whatever reason. And it's kind of like, should you get back with that person? Or even accept that person as a friend? Could that person really ever change? I have to let you know that in my experience, the majority of people don't change. But I still know some people who have changed. So in order to change, people need to want that change for themselves. And they have to have a really big reason as to why they want to have that change and make it stick. The latter part is very important because it's easy. Well, it's not that easy, but it's easier for people to make some changes temporarily and then they slip back into their old ways of doing things. So people are programmed from birth by their parents, by their teachers, by relatives in their life, by people who they've been friends with in the past. Maybe they've had past relationships and dating experiences, and all these things help to shape the current version of them. And so you have to kind of look at a person's life and how it's evolved and how they've evolved as a person. Now, some people do not change that much. They don't even change their car insurance. They'll keep the same car insurance company all the time. They'll be really upset if their car has to go. They might walk this very same way to work every single day, wearing exactly the same clothes and exactly the same day. And people are they have habits, and people dislike change in general, and they like, patterns of behavior, repetition, to feel familiar and comfortable. When something's uncomfortable, most people do not want to do it. And change is not a comfortable thing, especially if it's thrust upon you, right? No one wants change smacked in their face and say, hey, I'm changing your life now, go in this direction, right? And I learned years ago that it's much better to make change happen for you than having it just happen to you. In other words, it's much better to decide to change yourself than have someone else thrust change upon you. That could be an organization, a company, some sort of health problem, some sort of financial issue. It's much better if you can actually push through life and keep making changes to yourself and to your life yourself, right? Because therefore you're more in control. You can't control what external people do, external forces do. You can only control your own behavior and your own actions. Lots of love to you. Thanks for the thumbs up. So this is where people get very confused and people don't realize, because we're not really brought up to say, hey, you're responsible for your own actions. Everything you do is your fault or your goodness. Everything relies on you. When we're brought into this world, we're brought up usually by parents. Maybe not. Some people are adopted. Some people I only have one parent. Some people are brought up by their grandparents and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily true, but we're brought up usually, and when we're brought up, we're not responsible for ourselves. We're a baby, right? And we're a kid, and we grow up as a teenager, and we have caregivers, those people who are responsible for us. So back in those times, we are pretty helpless, especially as a baby. We have to fend for ourselves, and we only have our caregivers, whomever they may be, to look after us. And this is usually how we form what they call in psychology and relationships usually as attachment styles. And it depends on how your parents bonded with you, or your caregivers your primary caregivers bonded with you as a baby, as to how you actually develop in your relationships with other people in later years. This is something I've been studying quite a lot recently for my Asexual Guide to Sex book. I didn't think I would be learning much, all the in-depth stuff about attachment styles, but I have, and it's kind of like, whoa. And so it's very, very fascinating. I already knew that I have an anxious attachment style, which isn't the best attachment style. The best attachment style is securely attached. And so the securely attached person, Liam, hello, sweetheart. Sandra, great to see you. Oh, lots of love to you, Liam. Lovely to see you. So a secure attachment style is the best attachment style to have if you can have that. And a secure attachment style is basically when you are securely attached to your caregiver, you know, and you're very independent. You grow up to be very independent, can take care of yourself, but also you can rely on others, like family and friends. You don't have a problem with relying on other people, but you can also be very independent, look after yourself. You don't need anyone, but you can work in harmony with other people and have very healthy relationships. This is not full in-depth attachment theory stuff. I'm just telling you very, very little, to be honest. A lot of it's in my book, so you can wait for that. But the other attachment styles are disorganized, avoidant, and anxious, and these are insecure attachment styles. These are where the problems usually lie in relationships, because when we're not securely attached, then we have certain behaviors which are not good, but we may not realize it. And as adults, you know, we don't know this until we learn about it. For example, an avoidant attachment style, this type of person will see closeness as a weakness, and they will want to avoid the situation. Thus, if there's an anxious attachment style person, such as myself, ends up being in a relationship with dating an avoidant type of person, the more the anxious person wants to be closer to their partner or person they're dating, the more they want to run a mile. So avoidant people have as babies not had their caregivers there for them when they should have done, and they've kind of learnt bad behaviors, and that, you know, they've got to basically fend for themselves, and that they're not taught that it's okay to have an emotional attachment. It's healthy to be attached to someone emotionally. They've been taught that basically, you know, any emotions like a weakness, and they need to push that away, and they can't get too close to people in case they get hurt. And, you know, and then you have like a disorganized attachment style where they're a mixture of anxious and anxiety. So an anxious person gets very anxious in the relationship. They want to hear from their person often. They want to like be in their lives. They want lots of communication throughout the day. They want to know what's going on. They get very anxious that they please their partner, and they haven't done anything wrong by their partner. And they kind of like, they are insecure, and they would like lots of reassurance and to know that everything's going to be okay. And they need someone reliable, stable, and strong. And that's why they're better suited if you can get with a securely attachment style, because obviously secure are the only ones that are secure. The disorganized, the insecure, disorganized and anxious and avoidant are all insecure attachment styles. And obviously that's not good for relationships. But trying to find that out as an adult, and you're like, oh my God, this is how I was as a baby. This is how, you know, like, so for example, if your parents are there for you emotionally some of the time, but they're not there for you at other times, you probably end up with a disorganized personality type, where one minute you're anxious, the next minute you're avoidant. And that's because your caregivers one moment be emotionally there and supporting you, the next minute they're not there for you, and it's a constant don't know where you stand with them. And so this leads to disorganized behavior. So in a relationship, one day you might be like really wanting to talk to a person, really want to keep in touch with them, and the next day you might be like, oh, I'm pushing them away. And so this is very erratic behavior, and for the person on the other end of that, it's very difficult to have a relationship with this person because they're all over the place. But a securely attachment style is someone who's like secure within themselves, so they don't need to rely on a partner. They don't need validation from their partner. They can be with friends and family by themselves, and they can spend time with their partner. They're healthy together in the relationship or away from the relationship because they're secure within themselves, confident, usually quite sociable. And so, you know, they're fine. And so how does this relate to, do people really change? Well, a lot of people have got these attachment styles from childhood, and if they do not realize the attachment styles they have, then they can't work on them. And if they've had problems in the relationships or dating scenario or even friendships, it is likely a lot of the time to do with these attachment styles. And until they understand what their attachment style is and how they need to correct some of the bad behaviors, for example, that go with those attachment styles, then it can lead them to continuously getting into a relationship and it failing because they haven't addressed these behaviors. It's not the adult's fault because they were a child when they got these. They were a baby when they got these. So they had no choice but to be these attachment styles in how they were brought up. However, as an adult, we have to try and realize this and work on those insecure attachment styles as much as we possibly can to be the best version of ourselves that we can. This means a lot of inner work, and it's not always easy. Any change is not easy. And so can people really change? A lot of people don't, because they don't really want to change. They don't see they have a problem and they don't think there's a need. They might put a temporary change in place, for example, to win someone back in a relationship. And then when they've got that person back in a relationship, they then can let that new pattern go because they've got them kind of captured emotionally, if you know what I mean, emotionally attached them. Now, if this was an securely attached person that they try to reattach, the securely attached person would recognize what they're doing and would be like, well, the behavior's not correct. You've obviously gone back to your old ways, and would probably just be able to leave pretty easily that relationship because they're secure within themselves and they don't need a relationship, and they're not a needy person, and they can handle rejection fine, and they can just go off and leave. If it was someone like an anxious attachment style would be, oh my God, you know, I don't want to lose them again. So therefore, they will likely accept the bad behavior, and even, you know, because they won't want to go through the breakup all over again. And so this is how it becomes very dangerous for an insecure attachment style person to get back with someone who may say that they have changed when they haven't. Because they're not secure enough within themselves to be able to leave that relationship once that person is playing up again. They would probably cause them quite a lot of grief and anguish, and also as insecurely attached person would feel more insecure, and it would perpetuate their insecurity in new relationships. I'm just always shut down. A relationship would shut me down more. That's partly why I don't want a relationship. I think you've probably got an avoidant style, Liam, from what I can understand. You're probably avoidant attachment style if you look at that up, I'm guessing, from what you've just said. Because basically people who are avoidant, they like their own space all the time. They don't want to spend time with the partner very much, or they don't want a relationship at all because they see emotional attachment as weakness, and they would push the person away. They don't want to get too close to anyone. And that's to do with when you're brought up, you get into a avoidant attachment style because of the way your parents treated you. So you probably may have been punished for getting too close something like that, and therefore you don't want to be punished again. So you emotionally punished, so therefore you avoid the situation and fend for yourself, basically, and grow this very independent streak where, you know, emotions are a bad thing, because, you know, when you try to attach emotionally to your caregivers, they pushed you away, and so therefore you do that with other people. That's the theory of avoidant. I would say, from what you've just explained, it sounds like you're an avoidant type of person. So my life, just popping in for a second to say hi. I have a boyfriend, and I think I'm on the aromantic spectrum, but like one of the ones that feels romantic attraction, but it fluctuates, and I think it sometimes depends on the situation. I don't know, I'm still figuring it out. Oh, you mean grey romantic, do you? Possibly. Or do you mean arrow flux? Because you can arrow, I'm going off on a tangent here a minute. Arrow flux or aromantic flux, aero flux, whichever way you want to pronounce it, is when you fluctuate up and down the aromantic spectrum. Whereas grey romantic is when you basically you only experience romantic attraction in limited, rare, or specific circumstances, but usually not enough to want to act on it. Maybe there's a few labels I'm looking at. Oh, that's good, my life. Are you still with the same guy? I can't remember. I was thinking about you the other day. You came to my mind. You must have spiritually connected with me. I thought, what's happening with my life and her boyfriend? Oh, you're 20. Oh my gosh. It's been such a long time. Well, a belated happy birthday. Wow. Yeah, it's been a really long time. Are you still with a boy? Because I remember you got back with a boyfriend. And I couldn't remember if you were still with him or not. As it's been ages since we caught up. I don't allow myself to get attached to anyone, says Liam. Yeah, I'm guessing you've got an avoidant attachment style, which means basically you avoid being attached to people, you push them away. Ariana. Oh, hi, Ariana. Nice to see you. So yeah, so anyway, I need to carry on with the video because it's very important, because people are tuning in for this. So we're going back to attachment styles and if people can change or not. So in order to create lasting, impactful change, people have to understand their attachment styles, and we have to understand that people have different attachment styles, and so some attachment styles work better together than others. And also we have to understand ourselves on a fundamental level, you know, different things about us, how we react in certain situations, past experiences come into it as well. So in order to answer the question, do people really change? In order for people to change, people need to know that they need to change. They need to see for themselves. It's no good me or you or someone saying you need to change. Why should someone change for you? Why? You know what I'm saying? And even if they did it for you, it wouldn't stick, the change, because they are not intrinsically embracing the fact they need to change themselves. Quickly, my life. Oh my god, that's so weird. I watched a thing about ESP yesterday. His different boyfriend, but I know him for quite a while beforehand. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I thought about you. So yeah, so going back to what I was saying, so in order to make change and make it happen and make it stick, a person needs to, for themselves, see that they have a problem. If other people say they have a problem, unless they see it for themselves genuinely and genuinely want to get help, it will not stick. Because you have to have a big enough why to do something. You have to have a big enough motivation to want to change, and that has to come intrinsically from within you. So whenever I've made changes in my life, it's because a situation has become so painful, so unbearable, so intolerable that I have to change it. Because if I don't, I just go round and around in a like broken record cycle, and my life's just going to stay miserable in those moments. Now, I was in a really abusive relationship years ago. I've been in more than one abusive relationship, but in one particular relationship, I was a certain way in that relationship. Partly it was to do with the relationship, and partly it was to do with me and the way I was for years. And I have an anxious attachment style. So there are some Liam, I don't like attachment much. Yeah, I understand. So there's attachment styles, but avoidant, although it's called an avoidant attachment style, it's basically you avoid being attached. So it's kind of weird. It's called an attachment style when you don't want to be attached, if you know what I mean. So we need to understand that, you know, in order for someone to change, they need to want to change. They need to know there's a problem with them. And so in my life, when I was in this really, I've been in a couple of really abusive relationships, but when I was in this long-term abusive relationship, there were things to do with me and I didn't realize so much about it actually being an attachment style, but I have an anxious attachment style, and there are some bad traits with anxious attachment styles because we're insecure. And, you know, and this stems usually from childhood. And it can stem from other experiences in life, especially in adolescence, right? Don't forget, I had my first boyfriend when I was 6. So all that actually goes together to the experience, you know? And so basically, you know, there were some things that weren't very good about me at all. And I had to change those. And it's very difficult. And even now, I know what those things were sometimes, and I have things pop in my head, and I'm like, no, you do not do that. You do not behave like that. You do this instead. So it requires me to constantly coach myself and not allow myself to go back into bad habits and bad patterns, which is just going to create bad behavior in other people. So I just don't do that type of behavior. There are still some things I need to work on within myself. And when you want to work on yourself, it should be an ongoing journey throughout your life that you're constantly working and growing and evolving. But obviously, you can't give yourself a hard time, as in, I hate myself, or everything's so bad about me, or I've got to change everything about me, because this is not how we can behave. We have to be compassionate and loving and caring and giving to ourselves, because only then can we be that way towards others. So basically, what I need you to know is that in order to make change happen and make it stick, it always has to come from within you. So if you've been in a relationship or dating scenario and things went wrong, and the person says, oh, I want to change, that's good. They've made the first step, declaration, they want to change. But why do they want to change? Is it just to please you, only to please you? And they don't want to, you know, they don't want to actually change for themselves, because unless they want to change for themselves, the change will not stick, right? So if you're in a relationship with someone and they got bad habits, bad patterns, bad conditioning, and they say they're going to change, but it's not because they really want to, you get back into a relationship with them, the abuse or whatever happens is just going to carry on again and again. So we have to know that in order to make change stick, you have to want it subconsciously for yourself on a very deep level. You have to want it for yourself. And you have to be prepared to say, I've got a problem. I've got a problem. I'm going to get some therapy for this, because I cannot spend the rest of my life, which we only get one life, on this planet Earth in this time. If you're spiritual, you probably know about multiple lives and multiple planes, multiple universes. You might believe all that different stuff, but if we're taking just this one life here now in this moment, right, this is one life, we only get this one specific life in human form here now in this time zone frame, right? So when we're talking now, you know, if we want to not live a certain way for the rest of our life, because maybe we feel dread, maybe we hate our life, maybe we hate ourselves, maybe we feel bad about ourselves or bad about our life, or we regret something that happened, or we regret decisions we made, or regret decision we didn't make, we regret our actions that we did, we regret not doing certain actions, you know, all these things map up. And if we want to truly better ourselves, then we need to know and recognize these things and want to change it for ourselves. So we need to recognize all these things, recognize all these signs. Liam, exactly me. I don't want to change for now, if ever. Yeah, so exactly. Liam doesn't want to change. So, you know, if Liam doesn't want to change, Liam doesn't want to change, right? So there's no point, it would be no point in getting to a relationship with Liam, who doesn't want a relationship anyway, and expecting Liam to change when he doesn't want to change, right? It's not going to happen. So basically, you know, you can only get into a relationship with someone really who does want to actually work on themselves and change, because that's healthy. Everyone should want to make some changes and not stay the same to be a healthy individual in a relationship. It's no good if someone's just saying, accept me completely who I am and I'm really perfect and I'm not going to make any changes. Because if you're having a relationship, dating, or even friendship, you can't be so stuck that you're not willing to make some changes, you know, and accommodations. I don't think you should change yourself so you don't know who you are anymore. And like I said, you should be changing yourself to make yourself feel feel good about yourself and good about what you're doing in the terms of friendships and relationships, right? So you know, like when I used to go out with my friend Debbie to the cinema and stuff, you know, there's certain things I'll have to do that's different there. I might have to like compromise on film, what we watch on films and stuff like that, and where we go out for food venues and stuff. Although I'm very limited in what I can do, so she's kind of was more compromising for me. You know, it's little things like that. But you know, like you know, like I used to be a very jealous person, even in different situations, and you know, like but to a really bad state. But now I'm not like that. I can still get jealous though, and that's really difficult for me. I have to like contain that, and like I'm like, you know, I know some people say it's normal to have a bit of jealousy, and apparently it's, you know, some people think it is a bit normal to have some jealousy sometimes. But I know that it can get out of control. So I'm really conscious of that and always try not to be that way as much as possible. Obviously, in that case scenario, it's much better for me to get with someone who's secure attachment style person, and someone who is very, very honest all the time. So I don't ever suspect there's any problem, and therefore it's a lot more easier for me to not be jealous, because I just totally trust them, know they're trustworthy, they've got strong boundaries with people, and I don't have to worry about stuff like that. So you know, it can be fears and insecurities of yourself, but it can also be that the other person's contributed to that. You know, when I've had people in my past, and most of the guys have gone off with other women behind my back, and you know, that's obviously not a good thing. That's going to lead to a feeling of like insecurity and jealousy and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying, you know, like there are reasons for this type of stuff. So, you know, you have to really assess the situation. You have to assess who you are as a person. I'm a lot better now in friendships as well. I'm a lot better in social situations as well. So in the past, I would like shy away from groups. I would literally be on my own. I would feel left out and I would feel really lonely. But I realized after some time, it's because I didn't include myself with others. I was like kind of like shutting myself away and in a way pushing people away. And basically, like, I wanted to react with them. And because of anxiety as well, I've got generalized anxiety disorder, but I was kind of pushing people away. I was kind of in my mind like, no one likes me, no one cares about me, no one loves me, no one wants to know me, people don't like you. You know, this is how I used to be in the past, not now. And so all this stuff was going on in my head, but I realized that in order for people to like me and to feel good in social situation, I need to actually be in the group and be vocal and accept and get used to different people being around me. Because when I was in groups before, I usually used to hone in on one person, because I've always preferred one-to-one conversations and just go and sit next to that person and talk to them. And so, you know, and so when that's happening, you know, it's just like it's not good, because it means that you're stopping that person from talking with other people in the group, which is not healthy for them. And you're kind of not really helping yourself in terms of social skills. So I've had to change myself a lot on that. And what's really helped me do that is organizing asexual meetups and being more freer with people. So instead of being a bit more like, oh, I'm nervous, worried, anxious, and kind of being a bit more like, you know, like focused, you know, oh, thanks for a flower. You know, I'm more out. It reminds me of the flower actually in my life, because a flower, like, you know, it's got its petals that it opens, and so it's a bit like I became the flower. And so when I started organizing asexual meetups in 2015, this is kind of how I really came out into my shell, because I felt a lot more safe around these people. I felt a lot more secure in myself and around these type of people than I would do previously with sexuals, or with even with people that at work weren't so nice to me. I used to get kind of taken the mickey out of quite a bit in one of my old jobs because I was so different. One of the people that used to come with social events wasn't very nice to me in work. So when they used to come out and outside of that, it was just kind of like, well, you're trying to be like civilized to me or now or nice or whatever, but really you're horrible to me and quite bullying me in work, you know? And so there's a lot of stuff like that going on, and people that weren't actually really in my best interest. And I kind of really knew that. So it wasn't all my fault, you know, it's a very kind of like not secure environment for someone to be themselves in. So, you know, when you've got that going on, it kind of like it really knocks your confidence, your self-esteem, and you aren't able to actually flower and bloom, unlike my life sunflower down there. And so you really need to be having an environment that fosters this blooming, where, so if you are looking to change yourself, it's important, what I'm trying to say is to try and do it in more of a kind of like controlled, secure, safe environment to start with, and start practicing new skills and that. I mean, if you've got friends that are really trustworthy, say, hey, I'm trying to change this about myself and I want to practice changing it with you. And, if you actually say that I do this behavior with you, but I've realized that maybe it's not so healthy or so good, you could ask them how they feel about it. And then you could say, all right, I want to make this change. I want to try this. How would you feel about it? Because obviously you're used to me being this way. And then, like, change it. It depends what it is. Sometimes you don't have to ask your friends. You can just do it. But other times, if it's something to do with your friends and you might want to improve the friendship because, you realize that something's not working, or they're giving you a weird facial expressions and you get body language that means you'll kind of turn them off from your friendship or something, then you need to work on it. I'm very conscious when I've peed someone off. If I peed one of my friends off, I know about it. They don't have to tell me. I just know because I'm very intuitive. And so I can tell and it's hard because when you're that intuitive and you've peed them off when you didn't mean to, it hurts all the more because it's not like they don't know I know a lot of the time, but it's like they can't hide it from me. Not that they're trying to hide it per se, but I just know they are. And so that makes it twice as hard, really, is because I know that they know that they don't know that I know, but they probably do gather I know something, right? So I just, then if I peed them off, I'm like, okay, you need to back off now. You didn't mean to pee them off, but you're just making the situation worse. So you just need to change what you're doing. So sometimes we can have changes that happen in the moment that we need to recognize, and we need to think, hang on a minute, have I offended someone? Have I said something I shouldn't have said? Have I been a bit insensitive, or have I said something that I meant in good intentions and it wasn't taken that way? So we have to constantly monitor our own behavior in life and our interactions with others in order to implement change within those moments. But when I'm referring to this video, mostly I'm talking about intrinsic change from within throughout, for the whole in the rest of their life, basically. And so in order, like I said, for any change to happen and to stick, the person has to want to change themselves and recognize they have a problem. So this often means that they hold their hand up and say, hey, I've got a problem and I'm going to get some therapy for it. And they have to do the therapy for the right reasons, because one of my exes, he was very abusive in lots of ways, not every way, but most ways. And he got some therapy. Now, you would think, this is great. This is a person, you're a valuable friend to have, Sandra. Thank you. Lots of love. And you might think, that, great, this person was looking to get therapy. Brilliant. Because most people who are looking to get therapy have actually admitted there is a problem, and they're actually, thanks for the thumbs up, lots of love. And they're actually, going to work on themselves. Now, you want to be in a relationship with a person who is willing to work on themselves, who's willing to hold their hand up and say, I'm not perfect, I got issues, I need to sort them out, and going to take some action to do it. So it on the surface, it looks like it's a very, very good thing he did this. But he's I found it very narcissistic, which is one major form of abuse. And unfortunately, what happened was he used to wear therapy like a badge of honor. Like, look what I'm doing for the relationship and us. Aren't I such a great guy? When really behind closed doors, he hadn't really changed. Or if he did make any changes, they were very, very, very temporary, So I think he must have had it counseling for therapy, etc., for about 8 months or more. I think that's what it seemed like anyway. But he didn't change. It's for anger management, because he used to go around punching walls, pin me up against wardrobe doors, fridge freezers and stuff like this, but mostly used to go around punching walls and get really nasty and angry, because he used to say, well, I'm punching the wall instead of your face, basically, which wasn't, I'm glad it wasn't my face, but it's still quite frightening. And he punched a hole above my guinea pig's cage once when I got home. It was a rented flat and it was disgusting, and no one, my guinea pigs must have been frightened to death, because he was jealous of the guinea pigs. This is how extreme his jealousy got. I didn't get jealous of animals, but so he had extreme jealousy, but I would argue much worse than mine. But yeah, so you know, this was not good. And it was really terrible time. So this guy, you know, he was doing therapy really to just say, hey, I'm doing it for an ego thing. It wasn't actually because he wanted to change. And so I'd never come across this before, because I thought every person who did therapy was admitting they got a problem, and that automatically meant they were going to make a change, and they were going to see they were doing wrong, and they were going to become a better person. That's what I honestly thought. And I'm thinking, hey, you know, he's getting help. This is great. He's admitting he's got an anger problem. But no, it was really like a badge of honor for him. It was kind of to show off to all his friends and family, look what I'm doing for the relationship, you know, but really it didn't change him at all. And he was seen to be like the good person in that way. So that was very interesting and quite shocking, because it doesn't follow traditional protocols of someone trying to change, and hopefully they are going to get better because they're getting help. Because you want to be with someone in a relationship where they try and get some therapy and get some help. But I just want you to know that just because they get the therapy doesn't mean to say they're going to change, doesn't mean to say anything's going to change necessarily. They have to understand and actually believe that they do have a genuine problem with something, and they need to change it, and they want to change it for the better because they want to become a better person. This person clearly didn't really care that they got angry. It would all be my fault, of course. I would be the one who make them angry, not in them, you know, in their abusive scenario. Because when you've got an abuser, it's always the other person's fault, never their own fault. Because an abuser doesn't like to take responsibility for their own actions, and so therefore they will put all the responsibility onto the other person. And you know, it can be very, very difficult. This happened. We had couple counselling, and this guy managed to convince the therapist, one was a senior and trained other therapist, that I was the one with a problem. And I knew what this guy was like, my ex now, obviously. And he convinced them that I was a problem. It was only on the very last session that they realised what he was really like, which isn't a good guy. And yeah, they said, I guess you know him better than we do. And I'm like, yeah. And so, you know, and so it was horrible. I got a letter from them saying I'm the problem, and I wasn't. It was him. I'm not saying that I didn't do anything bad, but I didn't in terms of like what he did. But you know, there was a lot of stuff in that relationship that didn't bring the best out of me. There was stuff that I'm not proud of that happened, because I did defend myself in certain cases, you know. And so that was really difficult. But you know, that's why I only look to be in a relationship now with calm people. How can anyone treat you like that? He was using therapy to make himself look so good. Exactly, Liam. Exactly. And this is what's so sad, that this even happened. I didn't even know this was possible for someone to, yeah. So he was using therapy to make himself look good. Exactly. Right, there was weird scenarios with him. I mean, I haven't gone into a lot of stuff, but there was an incident on a train, for example, where a woman was being hurt by her boyfriend, and he stepped in to help her. Everyone in the train thought he was a hero. Yeah, he's out in the corridor one time. I think it might even be on the same train. I think it was a different time, like later. And we were in the train. Oh God, this is horrible to talk about. I haven't talked about this, I don't think. It's very upsetting. So we were on the train in like the in between carriages, you know, when you're about to get out and the door's there, but it was like it wasn't, the train was still moving, and he was being really nasty to me and shouting in my face basically at me. Obviously the train's quite loud, not many people here, there was only me and him in that specific part. So he's just kind of, I think it was exactly the same trip, if I remember. And on the one hand, he seems a hero because he saved this girl from her boyfriend hurting her, and you know, she was like, you know, like saying get away from me or something to him. So he went up and said leave her alone, and everyone thought he was a hero in the train, the particular carriage we're in. And then he's out, I think it was exactly the same day but a bit later, and then he's having a go at me in between the carriages, being really nasty, being very, very aggressive with me. You know, so he used to get so aggressive it looked like he was going to hit me, if you know what I mean, a lot of the time. So yeah, it was really, really bad. I haven't really spoken about that. There's a lot of bad memories. It's really weird, the stuff's coming back. You know, so you know, so he basically did therapy, yes, to make himself look good, and he, you know, he rescued this girl to make himself look good to other people. So everyone thought he was a lovely guy in that way, you know? Why wouldn't someone think this guy's lovely if that's what they saw him do for a girl? They think, wow, that's a really nice guy. She was going to get hurt. Not many people would be brave and courageous enough to do that and step in and help her out, you know? What a good guy. But really, he was a little shit, you know, little shit, excuse my language. He was really nasty to me. And a lot of the time I feared for my life with him, you know? So I do not want to get into a relationship with a guy like that ever again. You know, and unfortunately there are quite a lot of abusive guys. I did a pattern changing course with Stop Abuse for Everyone, and they specifically show you patterns of abuse to recognize, and you know, and you have to get away from these type of people and not go back to them and block them out of your life completely. The pattern changing course was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I've learned a lot about abusers and narcissists since then, but it's very difficult because when I did that course, they said basically 33% of the population at that time, 2013, this was, in abusive relationships. So 1 in every 3 people you meet are abusers, basically, and it's shocking, you know, because if you're doing dating relationships, you've got to know that basically every third guy I talk to is going to be usually likely to be an abuser. That's the reality of the situation, and I hate saying that, but it's true because it's quite frightening. But you know, so when people are saying they're going to change, if you've seen abusive traits or anything like that, you know, if it's an abuser, you should never ever go back to them, right? If they've got some traits that are narcissistic, I'd be very cautious of getting back with that person. If they're a full narcissist, you never ever want to get back with them. If they've shown some abusive or narcissistic traits, then I would argue, like, why would you even want to get back with them in the first place? In order for any person to change, it takes years usually of their life to undo all the conditioning, undo all the programming they've had since birth, reprogram themselves, because otherwise they fall back into the bad habits. Because when you grow up, you literally are conditioned and programmed with your behaviors and your attitudes and your mind, and you have obviously different people come into your life, like I explained earlier, your parents, your caregivers, your teachers, you know, friends, the people that came into your life back then, and you've got your own experiences of life, and all this forms like you as a character, as a person, the way you interact and act with other people, right? And so throughout our lives, we have to recognize the way we are and understand what's good about us, not so good, and then we need to change the not so good. Liam, what a hypocrite. He's the only person to treat his partner like crap. You are a very brave woman talking about the things you talk about. Thank you. Yeah, basically he did treat me like crap, yeah. And I get quite worried that you know, I don't want to end up in that situation again, because the problem is people who are who've had abusers before are more likely to attract abusers. And yeah, I'm saying that publicly, you know, which is a big thing. So I have you know, I have safety nets in place, if you know what I mean. So that I recognize, like, quite a lot of online people now, if they say certain things in text messages, in Messenger, I just know straight away they're an abuser, and I will just block them just by a few things they say, even in messages. And so I'll be like, no, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? I can just tell with the way they say something, the tone, the way they phrase something. Very cunning it is. But yeah, so it's really important to me that I don't get back with any people that have been abusive. And the problem when you love someone is you always want them to change. You always, you know, if they're bad and abusive, you want them to change. You want them to better themselves. You see for them possibilities of them not being like that, of them changing. When I first met my long-term ex, who was really abusive, when I first met him, we were friends for like 8 months. So he didn't start showing his abusive side until we got into a relationship. He was like, this is a guy on the train we're talking about, the same guy. He would make me, I'll go up to his place because we met, I ended up moving from an abusive situation with one person. Don't think I could change even if I wanted to. I'm wired like this. Well, anyone can change, Liam, if they want to, but it hit the nail on the head. It's wired. You have to rewire yourself. There's something called neuro-linguistic programming, which is to do with reprogramming the brain. But it's not easy because you've got so many patterns of old habits, old conditioning. It's really hard to change and break these things. Very, very difficult. Usually you have to have a kind of traumatic event to literally stop you in your tracks, and you're just not like that. That's the thing, that usually the catalyst that stops you behaving that way. But unless you've had such a traumatic event in your life, the pain of changing who you are and the wiring you've got is too much for what you think you'll gain out of it. So only when someone's gain is greater than their pain will they change. I'll repeat that. Only when someone's gain is greater than their pain will they change. So in other words, what they're going to get through the change has to be so much more better and valuable and in higher esteem by them. It has to be so much more than what they're going to lose. So even if people have got bad habits, bad thinking, bad wiring, bad programming, then they will stay like that if it's comfortable. And most human beings do not want to change because it's uncomfortable. And most people don't want to do uncomfortable things. They want to stay in their snail shell, if you like. I got to go. Stay safe, love and support. I think you asked me a question earlier, didn't you? I have a predicament. Sorry, I'm just going quickly for my life. A question. I have a predicament. I'm realizing that I don't want a legally recognized marriage with anyone. If divorce ever occurred, I'd be unable to emotionally and financially deal with it. My boyfriend is into legally recognized marriages. If you don't want marriage, don't do it. That's my answer in my life. I personally don't want marriage because I know that a lot of people do get divorced and a lot of people end up in abusive relationships and are controlled in marriages and stuff. So I personally don't do it. I mean, your boyfriend might be into legally recognized marriages, but if you're not, then you have to work it out. If he's not prepared to meet you in the middle and do an legally recognized marriage, then you might have to consider getting another boyfriend if he's not going to be the same way as you on that, because basically, when you're looking to get into a relationship with dating, you need to know the big things if you're compatible, which is marriage, children, sex, living together. All these things are deal breakers. So you should be sorting that out in the beginning of your relationship, before you get too attached to the person, because, I agree that if you do get divorced, it's very difficult to deal with emotionally and financially. And if you are married and you split up and get divorced, you have to have lawyers and solicitors involved. And it's harder for you to separate from that person. That's why major reason why I don't want marriage. Because I know many people, if they get into a marriage situation, it can end up with abuse. It can end up with neglect. It can end up with a person being just taken for granted. And so therefore, it's like, well, we're married now. I've got you. There's a lot of that I find in guys. I've got you now. So why do I need to try anymore? I've got you where I want you. And especially if they're married, you're contracted to them then. You would have to get a lawyer or solicitor to pay to get you out of that contract. And it can be very, very financially devastating. I know someone, it took them 5 years to leave their ex and divorce them. And it was so draining. They used to get so sick and poorly. So personally, I don't agree with marriage, but my parents have been married for 52 years. It works for them. It works for some people. I know I've got a friend who's married to his asexual wife. I know those two are very good together. Marriage is great for them. He's not at all an abusive guy. I've known him and I know him inside out in that way. I know he's a pure soul and would never be abusive. So there's some people it does work for, but if you've got any shred of doubt, I wouldn't get married. My romantic side likes marriage, loves the idea of marriage. My practical rest of me just like, I don't like marriage. I don't want it. I don't want to know, because I've been in scenarios, like I said, with the ex, and I thought he was, I didn't know when I was just friends with him for 8 months before we got into a relationship. I didn't know it was going to turn out like that. He used to bake me pies, used to massage my feet and do all this type of stuff, right? And be really like kind, caring and kind of like nicey and really good friend and everything like that. And then, got in a relationship and it all went downhill and became abusive quite quickly. But then, because I know him so much as a friend, I always used to think he would go back to being Mr. Nice Guy. And I used to think, well, where's the guy I met and I fell in love with? Because he was really nice at the beginning. We got on so well, thought he was my soulmate. And, and I just was really attached to him and couldn't let him go. And so it was very, very difficult. you know. So I just think that it's all right if you're attached to someone who's healthy and good for you, but if you're attached to someone who's not, then it's not good. So yeah, I would always say, you know, like, don't get back with an abuser, don't get back with a narcissist. Anyone who's a true narcissist will never ever change. If someone's got some nasty traits, I'd be very careful about ever getting back with them. I mean, if people have got really bad temperament, very bad mood, you know, that's not going to change overnight. Anyone who's got bad attitude and stuff like that, belittling people, all this type of thing, this is abusive stuff, right? In order for someone to change like that, they would have to do a lot of work on themselves for years. We're talking about, you know. It's no good someone saying, oh, I've changed over X amount of months. You know, you're looking 2 to 5 years of therapy, really. You know, people need to be getting therapy for about 2 years plus, and they need to, you know, 2 to 5 years. You know, it's not going to change overnight. You're not going to get rid of all those conditioning, bad habits, bad patterns, bad way of thinking and being overnight. Most abusers don't even agree they've got a problem. That's why they're an abuser, because they don't see they've got a problem. That's a trait of an abuser. It's always someone else's fault, never their own. You know, and you know, if they get rejected and said, no, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, instead of taking on the chin and thinking, okay, how can I improve myself? What happened? You know, can I get any feedback? You know, that, you know, in case it is anything to do with that, you know, and act sensible, they will be like, oh, everything's bad about you, and you know, they haven't done anything wrong. So, you know, you've got to look at the whole bigger picture. You know, there are some people obviously who are abusers, and their partners have to leave them. And so, you know, it might be the fact that someone's with a complete abuser. The only problem is, if you're with an abuser and you stay with them, that is your problem. Then you've got a problem with attaching and staying attached to abusers. I used to have this problem in the past quite a lot, and I'm also consciously aware of that now. But now I can disconnect from guys a lot quicker than I used to be able to, and I can usually recognize abusers very quickly. Some people may have some slightly abusive traits, and you've got to watch them, because, you know, like, should you even give them a chance? What's the point, you know? So anyway, the thing is, if you want change to happen, you have to make change happen for you, for the right reasons, not just to get back in someone's good books, but because you genuinely think, hey, I've got a problem, I've got bad attitude, anger problems, lying problems, cheating problems, whatever the problems are, and not being boundary driven, letting people walk all over me, you know, not being prepared to speak up for myself, all these kind of bad habits, bad things. And then, you know, you need to be able to work with someone. A therapist is a trained professional who is qualified to work on these things with you. So I've in the past had cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive analytical therapy, mostly for my anxiety. Well, that is really what it's for. Anxiety and depression I used to have years ago, and I kind of ended up getting a lot of that back at the end of 2020. But I've always had an anxiety condition, but I thought I'd freed myself of depression, and it came wham bam, slapped me in the face basically in December 2020 because of a traumatic experience I went through. So that was really shocking. And it was hard because I'd conditioned and retrained my brain to not be depressed for like 8 years. And so it just proves that sometimes things do reoccur and come back. Old patterns, old beliefs, old conditioning. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I had a lot of identity issues going on last year. I got diagnosed with PTSD, well, CPTSD, but unofficially. I haven't able to get official diagnosis. And when you have CPTSD, you're not really in control of your emotions, and you have a disconnect from yourself. You're like disconnected from yourself, and that's really difficult. So I had a lot of identity crisis last year. Since December the 16th, everything's changed because I'm focused on book publishing business, helping asexuals more, very focused on what I'm doing. You know, and so that is much better for my mind. But I still get very emotional, you know, like I've had a lot of emotional upset in the last few days, you know, because I had my Indian friend that I'd known for years not be completely honest with me. That's really hurt me. I decided to still be friends with him in the end because he'd support me throughout the years, and I have had a lot of good stuff come from him. He's always made me feel beautiful, and he's always included me in his life, and I've met some of his family on camera, and you know, I do have a lot of good things about him. He's not abusive, he's not narcissistic, and he's getting some help, therapy. So, you know, I'm not going to go into any more details because it's personal stuff, because I have agreed to be his friend and I do keep confidentiality. You know, I won't say what the therapy's for, but anyway, you know, I'm just proud that he's doing that, and he's saying, hey, I have got a really bad problem, I've got to sort it out. So that's good for him to do that, and I admire a guy who does that and trying to change his life, you know. And I want to support him, even though I find it difficult to trust him now. So that's really hard in some ways, but that was very emotional because I blocked him on Facebook. I thought I was going to have to kind of possibly cut him out of my life for good. But then I did reflect, and I've known this guy for like 4 years, I think. And I look back at all the times and the things like quality of the friendship, and I assessed, you know, like how often he's been there for me, how much he supported me, how he's always made me feel gorgeous and beautiful and tried to make me happy. And so there's a lot of good stuff about him, and especially because he's not a narcissist or abuser. Like, if you know, people who are not narcissist abusers, they can change and they can become better people and they can mend their ways, because, you know, that then they can see their problems. The only problem is he didn't actually see that he was being dishonest with me. He didn't admit that, and so that was really difficult, because I'm saying, unless you admit that, you know, I'm struggling because it's hard to like move forward if you don't admit that, you know, when I kind of proved it to him. So anyway, you know, he's just like sorry about all that, and we're just like trying to get on with our friendship again now. But obviously that has happened, so it's difficult, but I've always cared about him. I'm always fond of him, as he knows, and you know, there is a lot of good stuff about him. So I think I've assessed the situation as a whole, tried to assess it more logically than with too much emotion. And although I'm very emotional, and I've thought to myself, okay, it's going to be really difficult to trust him now in some ways, but he has been there for you a lot in the past, and you have a friendship that has kind of like stood the test of time. And do you think you should completely give that up? And so I thought, well, I'm going to carry on being there for him because he supported me before. And yes, I don't like people being dishonest anyway, big or small, but I wanted to support him because he supported me throughout the years. And, you know, I always felt comfortable around him and stuff. So I think it's really important that I've made that decision. It's a really difficult decision for me to make. But I think, you know, I feel that there is potential for him to make definite lasting change, and that he is capable of doing that. Obviously only time will tell if he has actually done that and implemented, which is why I said people have to do things for themselves. But he was already getting help, I think, before this happened. So I'm kind of like thinking, if you're getting help before this happened, then why is it happening? But never mind, everything happens for a reason, as they say. So I'm just thinking, you know, like I'm still his friend, and I've decided to go with that and stick with that, right? Because I just thought, overall assessment of pros and cons, stay or go, I think, well, there's more pros if you look at it back over the history, because I've had more feeling good times with him than feeling bad times, and he's always made me feel good about myself. And I always think it's a really good guy who makes a woman, makes a girl, makes a person feel good about themselves. And you know, I've sometimes like had like really like been poorly and not had much sleep, and my hair's been a mess, and he's like, oh, you still look beautiful. You know, he is aesthetic and romantically attracted to me, and I am him, so I've probably got a bit of influence as why I'm still sticking around him as well, but it also makes it harder as well. So yeah, but you know, I do see there are good things about him as well. So on reflection, that's what I decided, which is quite a brave move of me. So yeah, and then obviously I had the postcard, from the guy I was dating last year. Now that was really weird. Didn't expect that to happen. And that person says about the change, you know, but it's only been like 4 months. you know, and there is no way someone can change their programming and conditioning in 4 months. It's not going to happen, right? It takes a long time. And I don't know how much of it they're wanting to change for themselves and they're just doing it to get me back. Unless they actually want to change for themselves and see they've got a problem, it's not going to stick. And they're going to go back into old habits and patterns. Also, just learning about stuff, because he said he'd been learning about boundaries, which I'm really pleased he has made. You know, he's obviously making some conscious. Liam, you're gorgeous and beautiful, Sandra, inside out. Oh, thank you. Lots of love. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, the guy who was sent me the postcard, he didn't see that I'm beautiful inside and out, you know, because he was talking about my looks and stuff. Well, you know what happened, don't you, about him saying about my, I have to lose weight if I want to be with him. I'm like, seriously? No. It's like, I do not be with a guy who speaks to me like that. And well, actually, I did give him a second chance and carry on still being in dating scenario with him at that point. So I did give him a second chance. But I mean, it's disgusting, any guy saying that. I mean, he already went and told everyone we're in a relationship together before I even agreed to it. Because I said I don't want an online relationship. Which in the postcard he seems to have really not listened to. So he says he's listening. He says he's like learnt about boundaries, about healthy love and stuff like that. But yet he's not even listened to what I said. Because how many times have I had to tell him I do not want an online relationship, and he can't come to the UK, right? So how can I get into a relationship with him back again when I don't even want an online relationship? And part of having boundaries and healthy love is listening to the other person's needs, understanding them, and acting accordingly on them. You know what I mean? And so clearly, he's not done all the work he needs to do. And I don't know if he ever will, because it's going to take him years. It's going to take him at least 2 years, up to probably 5 years for him to completely change his life if he wants to, and change himself and his attitude and behaviours and the way he interacts with people. You know, and so just 4 months is nothing. I'm not going to get back into a relationship with someone. Probably shouldn't ever get back with him anyway, because the way he was with me is pretty disgusting. I mean, saying about you're going to have to lose weight if you want to be in a relationship with me, that's disgusting. I want a guy who loves my body, even though I'm asexual. I want a guy who loves my body, who loves a big, beautiful girl, who like loves my facial features, who loves everything about me and my personality, and who doesn't expect me to change. Any guy who tells a woman to change her weight or a shape like that is just, no, that's one of the signs of an abuser. You know, it's just disgusting. And so, you know, you don't want to be around someone like that. You know, I want to be with a guy who totally thinks, like Liam says, I'm gorgeous, beautiful inside and out, you know. And then he said some remarks about an older woman as well. It's like, well, if you are attracted to me, then you're attracted to an older woman anyway. So why are you moaning about an older woman? What does that say about you as a person? What does that say about you as a person? If you are attracted to me, yet you're complaining I'm an older woman, like, and you're not, you know, like, oh, it's about being out in public with what will people think if I'm with an older woman? It's like, well, I'd rather be with a guy who's into older women, into older, big, beautiful women, if you like. I'm not that big, I'm not huge, but you know what I mean? So, like you just said, Liam, gorgeous and beautiful inside and out. Exactly, you know, and I want a guy who loves my body and physique for who I am. I know that guys who like big, beautiful women, because one of my friends loves my figure. They're my friend. We're not in a relationship, but they love my body shape and figure. They don't like skinny girls. Physically, they don't find them attractive. But they think my shape's beautiful. They're really into my type of shape. It really does a lot for them. So that's the way it is. And so for some people, you know, they love big, beautiful girls and girls with a more fuller, voluptuous figure, as it were. You know, and so I want to be with the guy who loves my figure for who I am. Otherwise, you're just kind of like thinking, oh well, you know, like a guy's not really into you. If they're not into your looks as well, they need to be into all of you, not just like into you as in temporarily or because you suit their ego or because they, you know, to make them feel better. Anal, what? Oh dearie me. So, you know, it's just like, you know, it's just like, you know, you need to be with someone who's like really loves you for who you are. And that's really important, otherwise, you're kind of like feeling that you're having to justify your value and you're not appreciated and loved for who you are. No one should be made to feel bad about their looks. Everyone should be made to feel good in a relationship. And, that's what I do like about my Indian friend as well, is he's always really complimentary about my looks and never, ever, ever made me feel bad about them. And so there's no good going back to a guy who said those things, who made me feel bad about myself. What's the point? I think there's much better guys out there for me, And, if that's the way he thinks, then why be with me anyway? Because at the end of the day, if he wants a skinny girl, go and find a skinny girl. If he wants a young, skinny girl, go and find a young, skinny girl. Why even come back after me again? It makes no sense. It's like, why come back after me if you're not really into older women? But clearly you must have been at the time. I'm not really older though, am I? I'm very young for my birth certificate age. And, and you're not really in, you're into skinny girls. Why even come back after me? It makes no sense. It's like, but if you like younger skinny girls, go after younger skinny girls. Good luck with that. You know what I mean? This guy I'm not totally over. I've got another 4 months really before I'll be completely over him. But at the end of the day, you know what I mean? He's welcome to go and get himself a young skinny girl. Because I ain't changing the way I am. I love my food. I absolutely adore eating. And I do a lot of work in the evenings, which require a lot of work. A lot of work. Do a lot of work in the evenings that require a lot of work. I do a lot of work in the evenings that require a lot of food for energy. And so, yeah, I love my food. Why shouldn't I? I don't want to be with a guy who's watching what I eat and I'm feeling bad or guilty about eating. And it's like, oh, I can't eat. He even told me not to eat. I'm like, why would I want to go back to a guy like that? It's just totally ridiculous. And in order for a guy like that to change, it's going to take him at least 2 years, probably 5 years, if not more, if he actually really wants to change. But, it's very like, there's no mention of him even doing any therapy. If he realized he had an actual problem, he would go and see a therapist and get it sorted out, And so, and just learning the theory about something doesn't mean to say he's going to put in practice. Some people can learn about boundaries, they can learn about healthy love, but it doesn't mean to say they're actually going to implement it. The actual change comes from implementation consistently and persistently, day in, day out, month in, month out, week in, week out, over time. And it's not easy for a person to change. It's difficult, any person to change. It's really hard when they've instilled into their brain or had instilled into them certain patterns of behavior, certain ways of thinking, certain ways of being, and it's just, unhealthy patterns, and they need to do some proper work on it. So when he's sending me the postcard about like, it might be taking a step back to get in relation, but I've really changed. It's like, well, no, I don't believe you have really changed. I believe you've made a start on really changing because you've noticed that there might be some change you need to do and you've taken some step towards that. But otherwise, I don't believe you've really changed at all. Because you haven't even listened to what I said is that I don't want an online relationship. That's for a fact, He's studying for 3 years. And then, he can't even come to the UK. So what would be the point of getting back into a relationship? It's like unthought through. So ridiculous, So, love isn't enough in a relationship. And I don't want to be with a guy who speaks to me like that. It's not nice to me, It's horrible. And so, yeah, I want to be with a guy who likes an older girl, who loves my body shape and who makes me feel really happy as much as possible and special and makes my life feel good. And so I always feel more better around him than not, That's what life should be like, And so, people have to do a lot of years work on themselves, a lot of therapy. They have to be able to do like a lot of personal and professional development work on themselves. They have to realize they got a problem, want to change for them. And they have to actually implement those changes on a subconscious level and truly want to make lasting change. I mean, if you love someone, why would you even say those type of things to someone? Real, true love, you don't be like that with them. You know what I mean? I don't know if you noticed that I've been sharing some posts lately on my YouTube. I've been sharing different videos and it's all about kind of breaking taboos in relationships difference. And there's one guy, and he is really, really large. This is another YouTube channel, but I've shared it in my post in here. He's really, really large, and he's married to a girl who's very petite and thin. And they are, I think they're married, they're at least engaged, and they've got a kid together. They're very happy, but he's a big guy, he admits. And he, you know, and they do TikToks together, I believe. They have a show together, but he gets made fun of a lot. But he's like, you know, as long as it's not affecting him mentally or physically, what does it matter what his size is? And she purposely likes bigger guys. She saw him on a Netflix series. And she managed to find a way of contacting him and DMing him. And she flew over to actually have a date with him. And then they got together in a relationship, you know. And a lot of people are like, oh, if you're big, you can't be with can't be with a beautiful woman like her. And, you know, like, you know, it's almost as that if you're big, you don't deserve to have a loving, beautiful looking partner. It's just ridiculous. You know, it's just people base so much on looks. And I love my looks anyway. I think I'm damn beautiful, to be perfectly honest with you. I love my looks. I love my face. I love my hair. I love my eyes. I love my smile. I like my body. You know, I like myself, you know. I think I'm very attractive because I like looking at me, which is great, you know. So if some guy doesn't really like looking the way I look, then fine, bye-bye. I'd rather like look at myself and be with myself, you know, much better. So, you know, it's just a case of most people, they say change because they just want something. They say they want to change, but they don't really want to, because what they want is probably to get back into a relationship with a person or carry on a relationship with a person, and they know if they say they'll change, that it will get them attention, and like, oh, okay, if they change, well, why not get back with them, because they're going to change, right? But it doesn't work like that. They have to make the change first, and they have to prove it over time first. And if you've got a person who has got abusive or bad behavior towards you, you have to leave them usually to do their own cleanup, you know, to do their own work. Like, especially if it's a person who's abusive, you know, you have to leave them. You should never go back to an abuser. And even if they say they've changed, I'd be very weary of them ever changing. But, you know, some people can have some abusive traits but not be fully abusive. But, you know, a lot of the time they don't really change these people because they don't see they're the problem. They'll think that you're the problem. And so they don't make change and make it stick. And they kind of, you know, they see everyone else as a problem. And you know, it's not good. It's not healthy. So some people can change. I can give you an example of someone who's changed. So I dated a guy for one night, realized that he should always be my friend, never more than that. And this guy, when I was his friend, I was glad I was never in a relationship with him for more than one night, because he ended up two-timing women and being very, very bad with women. As a friend, he was nice to me and fine and great, but he used to two-time women, and it was horrible. But now he is in a married relationship. He's married with kids and a police officer, and he's very faithful to his wife, as far as I know. He's completely changed guy, family man. So he's not interested in going off with other women. He just with his woman, you know? And so some people can change. Here's a prime example of someone who's changed. However, not all changes for the better. So there's another guy I used to be with in a relationship years ago as a teenager, and we almost got back together again, but not. Anyway, when I was in my last long-term relationship, I was always kind of thinking about this guy, and like, what if we'd have got back together? And then when I split up with my last long-term ex, this guy appeared magically in my city. And as I was speaking to him, I realised he changed for the worse because he became like his father. So it was very bizarre. So when I was like 14, I used to go around to his house, and his dad was like perverted. And his dad used to go, oh, like, twirl around for me, like, you know, like, so he could basically see my bum or whatever he was doing in my actual clothes, and like twirl around and perv over me. It was disgusting. And he's always having affairs, I think, from his wife, you know, and it's kind of humiliating when you're a kid doing that. Obviously now I would just like be refusing that type of thing. But anyway, he became like his dad, basically, after loads of women. He's got kids by multiple different women, and he likes the way he is, basically, you know. So he's not a good guy, and he's changed from, like, when I knew him as a teenager, he wasn't into having affairs and cheating. When he was my boyfriend, he was very dedicated to me. He used to follow me around everywhere, be really into me, really, like, you know, more into me than I was into him, actually. And you know, it was just like, kind of, he was really, really, you know, a good guy back then. And then as time's gone on, he's got worse. He's changed for the worse. So people, you know, think that change is always a good thing. It's not. He changed for the worse. So on the one hand, you've got the guy who was the first guy I talked about, who I was in a relationship with for one night, and realized I was meant to just be a friend. And he used to two-time women, be really, really bad. And then, you know, he met a woman, got married, had kids, a family man, totally changed. And then you've got the other guy who was actually not doing that when I met him, very faithful, very loyal, and then became like his dad, had multiple women on the go. I think 2, like, twins at one point, I think. I'm not sure. I get confused because there was another guy, ex of mine, that was dating 2 women at the same time. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? And so, you know, yeah, so it's really bad. So some people change for the worse. So don't think just because someone changes, they change for the better, right? You would have thought that people would, because why would they want to change else? Why would someone want to change to be worse? But some people do. Maybe through experiences they've had, or because the true selves coming out, you know. So we have to understand that not all change is good. And so when you're asking the question, like, does someone truly change, you have to ask yourself, what change would you need from them in order to be happy with the friendship, relationship, dating scenario, and then assess where they've truly changed. And I would argue they will not change until they've had at least a couple of years therapy and work on themselves. You know, usually you have to leave someone to get on with their therapy, especially if they've been abusive in any way, because that's a lot of work to unravel, a lot of bad conditioning, bad habits, bad patterns, bad thinking, and so they have to have a lot of work done on them. And, you know, if they're of the opinion that they don't need to change, or that therapy is beyond them, you know, oh, I don't need therapy, you know, it's not good. No one should be so kind of stuck up that they don't need therapy and they're beyond therapy. It's like, well, you know, no one's like, you know, like, therapy's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's saying I've got a problem and I need to sort it out, and I need some professional help because I'm clearly not seeing the bigger picture, because I'm me, right? You can't see yourself as others see you, because you are you. And so you sometimes need outside help. You know, it doesn't mean to say that you're a bad person if you go to therapy either. Like, I've been to therapy, like, last year again. I had therapy. I wasn't a bad person. I literally lost my identity because I got a traumatic situation going on, and probably several others as well, you know. And so I'd lost a sense of who I was, and I was like, didn't even recognize myself anymore, you know, a lot of the time, you know. And so I was having an identity crisis and feeling not like me, and so that I need some therapy. You know what I mean? And so I went back to it. I asked for the therapy because, like, in the past I used to ask for therapy because if I got a problem, I want to sort it out. I don't want to sit there, you know. I'll try and sort it out as much as I can myself, because I've got a lot of tools now, because I've done a lot of therapy over the years, but I've also done loads and loads of personal and professional development work since 2012. So I know a lot of tools, if you like, to help myself become better. And so this particular therapist, in the end, the last couple of sessions were really good. She understood me and she said, oh, you've already got a lot of tools in your toolbox, you know, coping mechanisms, management strategies, ways of dealing with things, health and well-being scenarios, you know. You've got a lot of those things that you've learned over the years that you can apply to this situation. She was happy the way the sessions were left because she knew that I was in a much better place being myself. She's like, oh, I see now the person you've always told me you are. But she couldn't see that in the beginning because I was very, very kind of like a lot more miserable and crying all the time. I didn't show a lot of this on camera because, like, by the evening I was usually a lot better, and also doing this channel helps me feel like myself. I just chill out and relax on it, and I feel at home all the time. So it's just like therapy for my soul talking to you, you know. And I share some very difficult things, though. It doesn't necessarily help me when I go to sleep, because I start flashing back with my ex, and I'm like, I really don't want to be thinking about him again. This is my last long-term ex we're talking about, back in 2011. So yeah, so it's important that you understand all these things, that in order to see if someone's truly changed, one is they've got to know that there's something wrong and that they need to change it, right? Two is they've got to want to change it for themselves, deep down inside, to make it stick. Three is they need to get some help. They can't do this on their own because they don't know everything they don't know. There's going to be tools and techniques and things that they will need to do in order to instill new patterns into themselves, new beliefs, new way of being, new way of thinking. If they are just with themselves in a perpetual state of thinking in their own head all the time, that's not going to get them anywhere. It's just going to mean that they're like a dog trying to chase their tail all the time. So they need to get some outside help, whether this is a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, a counselor, you know, all this type of thing. And like I said, I've tried CBT, CAT. I prefer CBT because it's patterns of weight and behaviors, and you know, it's more analytical. So it depends what type of person you are. But usually what's helped me the most is personal and professional development, you know, like realizing that we have to make changes and that we have to do it ourselves, and that everything happens for a reason, and that we're very resourceful people, really. And you know, like raising your self-esteem up, and self-belief and self-confidence and self-worth, and you know, and understanding that change is actually a really good thing, that if we don't change, we stagnate and die inside our soul. And so whilst change is really scary, especially for someone like me with anxiety, and I'm sure a lot of people who here have got anxiety as well, you know, it can make it really frightening. But you have to realize, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you don't, you know, if you don't make change happen for you, it will happen to you. And that is the worst thing in the world. It's like someone dumped something on you. It's like, I'm going to change your situation now, whether you like it or not. And then you're like swimming and drowning in water because you're like, oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this. Help, help, help. Right. So it's much better to plunge ahead and make yourself change, force yourself to change, but do it for the right reasons. You know, I still have changes to make. You know, like sometimes I get so distracted by social media, for example. And like if I switch my mobile phone off for a while, if I switch the, you know, like make sure I'm not on the internet, you know, looking at videos and stuff, if I kind of turn off that and just like have a list and focus for some solid hours on these things I need to get done, then they get done a lot quicker and I'm more productive. But I do get easily distracted, and for me personally, I like to share quite a lot of social media stuff because I find it very relevant. I've like been sharing quite a lot of videos and posts on this channel about, you know, relationships that are very different. You know, like I said, a big guy with a thin woman, you know, and a woman loving a big guy. There's a person of color with an Asian guy, so she's voluptuous, bigger, a black person of color, whichever you prefer to say, and the guy is a thin Asian guy, and apparently it's quite taboo for those two types of people to be together. But you know, like they're like, oh, you know, do guys like bigger women? Because apparently they don't. And he's like, yeah, I love big because, like, you know, I can handle it. Because obviously a lot of guys, particularly who are asexual, for example, they like a bigger woman because they've got bigger bust, bigger thighs, bigger parts to touch and feel and hold. Obviously, if you're a sensual asexual, you might like that as well. You might like bigger body parts because you might have more to touch and feel, and textures and components. If you like, you got more going on, haven't you? You know what I'm saying? So you might really love that, you know. And they've had like age gap relationships. I shared one earlier where the young thin girl asked her older female partner to get engaged, like getting married to her, and you saw the wedding. It was so beautiful. So they're a lesbian couple. I think the woman's 60 and she's got a really like high powered job, which you wouldn't usually be able to kind of like think you could openly say you're gay. And then her girlfriend, I think, is in her 20s. So I think it's 20s, unless it was early 30s, but I think there's about nearly 30 years difference or more with them. So it's really beautiful to see that, see the ceremony. And, I like the fact that, to me, love is love and everyone's different. Everyone should be celebrated for who they are. And when you love someone truly, you don't want to change their body shape and start changing their facial features or their hair and whatever. You want someone for who they are, and someone who really likes age gap relationships will love the difference in age gaps. There's a lot of people that like are not, that like cringe, and it's like sometimes, but it's like you just got to ignore that at the end of the day. There's also lots of people that love age gap relationships. I often think that people who are cringe or make horrible comments are the ones that are very insecure themselves. They're thinking, oh God, I couldn't do that. But a lot of them as well, they're kind of like they kind of get jealous and stuff if they see like a guy who's bigger with a woman who's thinner and very good looking, most people think, then they get jealous and think that they should be with the girl because he's bigger, and so they associate bigness with not good looking, but she loves his looks, and so I just thought it's amazing to see all these different couples. I've shared them in the posts on here, so don't forget to check some of those out. And so we really, like, if you're talking about change, people need to change the way they view things, the way they see things, that love is different, and people who are different can have true, long-lasting love, loving relationships together, loving, caring, committed relationships. They can stand the test of time because love is love. You don't have to be a certain age, you don't have to be a certain weight or certain race or certain color or certain religion to have love. If you love someone, you should love everything about them. Obviously, if they're abusive, you don't want to love that. But you know what I'm saying? If it's looks and personality and stuff like that, you should love as much as possible, and not want to change them. You should be happy with who they are, and obviously if you've got to make changes as in a sense, you've got bad behavior, then yes, you do have to change that. But anyone who goes around saying, oh, well, I don't like your looks, go and change them for me, it's just a disgusting person. It's not good. And why change your looks when you can get loads of people that would like the way you look? stay single, So, do not go around changing your body shape because someone else doesn't like it. That's an abusive thing that people will say, if they say about change your body shape, do not do that. It's an abusive thing. And, what I'm talking about here in terms of change, it's when someone is abusive themselves or got negative beliefs or negative patterns, negative way of thinking. It doesn't have to be abuse. It could just be you've got bad habits, bad patterns, bad thinking, negative, look very, very negative. Like I've had lots of therapy for anxiety and depression in the past as well. So those type of things. So, whatever change you want to make in your life, it has to be done for the right reasons, that you want to make it and you want to make it stick, and you actually do the hard work it takes to physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually change, to what you want it to be, and you need to be looking at the bigger picture. And you need to ask yourself, like, am I really implementing what I'm learning? Loads of people that do personal professional development work, for example, they'll sit down and watch videos and they might even watch the end of it. They'll just watch a little bit of it. A lot of people do courses and they don't even finish the courses. When I do a course, I usually finish it. There's only one course I've not actually taken, which I bought years ago, and another one I bought this year that I'm actually even later till next year is about creating children's books, like from scratch, like with the illustrations, because I've got books. I just need to do the illustrations. The children's books, yeah, I'm a children's book writer as well. Didn't know that, maybe. So it's really important that you just like understand this thing about change. And there's a lot of people that don't change. They say they want to change, but they don't really. They just want what they want and will say anything to get it, unfortunately. So you have to be very wary of these people. most coaches, which I agree with, would say leave these people alone. Let them work on their shit. And once they've done it, you're talking a good couple of years, then if they come back, and if you're single, you want to hear them out, you want to, talk to them again, then you could think about doing that. But you would always have to proceed with caution, and and they might have moved on to someone else by then anyway. And you might have moved on to someone else by then. So you know what I mean? You have to leave people to work stuff out by themselves a lot of the time. With my Indian friend, going back to him, I'm actually still friends with him, like I said, and I'm still around him to support him because, like I said, he's not abusive, he's not narcissistic. There's a lot of good stuff about him. So, is it risky supporting him? A little bit, because obviously I've been hurt with him not being completely honest, but I know he's supporting me and I do want to support him. And I feel he is making some changes in his life. I have seen some changes. So yeah, so it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes you could stay with a person if they're changing, but it depends how bad that person needs to change. It depends how much they need to change and what they were saying to you. So this Indian friend, he doesn't never made me feel bad about myself. He's always made me feel great about myself. Beautiful. He's always supported me. He's in general quite a healthy person in those ways. He's always included me, like with his friends and his family, and so he's not hiding me away or keeping me secret or anything like that. He doesn't care what his family think. Well, his family the people I've met so far have all seemed to like me. So it depends on the circumstances. But if there's someone who's done a fundamental breach of your trust and they've done some things are not nice to you and stuff like that, then a lot of the time you've just got to let them go and get on with it and live their own life and change if they want to change. And and then if they come back 2 years later and they still love you and they've worked on everything and you can truly see it in practice, then again, I would still proceed with caution. You may want to be their friend first, but I would still not get back into a relationship with them just like that. Because they have to prove it. You know what I mean? If you've not seen them for years, you don't know if it's true or not. You'd have to see it. You'd have to see how they interact with other people, how their life is. You can tell a lot when you observe the person interacting with other people in social situations. So, for example, there was a heterosexual guy I dated back in 2000 something, I think it was. And when I first met him, he said he used to have anger issues, which obviously is not a good thing. But he said he used to, didn't have them anymore, basically. But when we were in McDonald's together, we were at the till point and he started getting very narky with one of the salespeople with his order. So he was being not very nice to the till operator. And then I'm thinking, that's not good. Clearly, he's still got some issues to deal with. And then when we went away together, I found this on his phone. I asked him to show me his photographs, which he did. So that was good. He was honest, open about that. But one of the photographs showed an anger management book. Now, obviously, you could argue this is good because he wants to work on himself. But he's told me he's not got any anger issues at that moment anymore. And yet he's got this anger management, which was taken. I dated him for 3 months. So it was taken in the 3-month period. And so I thought, clearly you've still got anger issues. And I said, I talked to him about it. And he said, you're the only person that doesn't make me angry. And so it's like, yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking hearing that. I mean, it was good that I didn't make him angry. But if everyone else makes him angry, that's not a good thing, is it? So, this is what I mean by people changing. It's very easy for someone to say they've changed. It's very difficult for them to actually do and to prove it and to not backtrack, so you really have to proceed with caution. I often think it's better to get into a relationship with a completely different person who you start afresh with, who you can hopefully trust from the off, and you don't have all this baggage with them, and so they can start their life afresh with someone else. And so that person doesn't know all their bad habits and bad problems from the past, and they can both have like a fresh new life, really. You know, but there are some people that get back together, but I think it depends very much on the circumstances, what was said, what was done, how it was left, you know. So yeah, you know, but if you've got someone who's just physically violent, stuff like that, just don't get back with them. I would never, ever, ever get back with my ex, who I split with in 2011. I won't be near him. I won't speak to him ever, because he has a way of enticing me back, and I will never ever go back to him. So I have to stay away from him and never ever speak to him again, ever. I will not do it. Not even if he crosses my path, you know, I won't. I have spoken to him since the split up, originally in the very beginning, but after that I just stopped talking to him. I won't let him charm me, you know. I just don't want anything to do with him. He's not a good guy and he never will ever change. I stayed with him for like 7 years thinking he would change, you know. 7 years for like 3 months of good stuff before, whatever, you know what I mean? It just, it beggars belief, really. But I was so wanting to believe he would change back to the person he was, you know. And I think that is a horrible thing, you know, when you're fixated yourself on this person is going to change back to being the nice person they were. So this person, like I said, went from being nice to actually being horrible, being a really good friend and thought he was my soulmate, really talking to me openly, honestly. And when I got into a relationship, it was like he would get very touchy, wouldn't want to talk to me about certain things, would hide, you know, will keep things secret, and you know, it just wasn't good. I kind of felt like, oh, I'd had this soulmate friend person who I ended up loving for a short period of time, and then he's gone, and I've been trying to find him for like 7 years, and I had to realize in the end the guy's not coming back, Sandra. It's not who he truly is. The person you knew him to be was just a facade, basically, and that's sad, because people can't keep up pretenses forever. If they haven't truly changed, you will see it. They will start saying stuff, they will start acting a certain way, their mannerisms, their behavior, their tone will just go back to the way it was, and it could be a hell of a lot worse. That's what's so sad and bad. It could be a hell of a lot worse. So if you were with an abuser and they said they changed and you thought they had and you went back with them, that's what I did when I got back with the guy. So basically, the guy, last long-term ex I had, was with a total of 8.5 years. I was with him a year and a half, then we split up for 6 months, and then I got back with him. And he was fine for about, was it a week, 3 weeks, and the rest of the time he was absolutely worse than before. And that's because I got back with him and he thought he can just get away with the behaviour he got away with before because I had him back, so therefore I must not be able to live without him. Therefore, you know, he didn't really need to change because he got me back. And he knew that, or thought he knew, that I couldn't live without him. So therefore I've got to just accept his bad behaviour. Now I'm just like, I have to go, you know. I'm just like, I have to go. I can't be with this type of guy, you know. So, you know, you have to weigh up the pros and cons of everything in relationships, dating and friendships. You know, there's some, obviously I haven't really talked so much about friendships, but there are abusive friendships, you know. There are one-sided friendships as well. So, you know, like if you want someone to change from a one-sided relationship, you need to bring to their attention that you feel it's one-sided. But if they're just making up excuses, you have to let them go. I had a best female friend from school. I'm still Facebook friends with her. But after years of like going to visit her myself without her making any effort to come and see me usually, and with the fact she then started saying 3 times that she was sick every time I was going to come over, I knew then that basically she didn't want to see me anymore. And that the time before when she stuck up for me at school, primary school, when I was being bullied, I always felt I owed her something, you know. But people do change in these ways as well. They change that you don't recognize them anymore. They change and become different, and you're not actually compatible anymore as a friend, you know. And people can do that in relationships and grow apart as well. So you know, some people do truly change without you asking them to, without you wanting them to, without you needing them to. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. You don't want them to change. You love them the way they are, and they decide they don't like the way they are, and they're going to make the change. And obviously with this friend I've been friends with since primary school, you know, to have her 3 times then start saying every time, I mean, it wasn't, you know, it was different Christmases. And she was like saying, oh, you know, I'm poorly and sick and I can't, you know, I can't make, you know, basically she couldn't make it and I was going over there to give her presents and only spending like 2 hours with her, I just knew then that it wasn't going to work and she didn't really want to see me anymore because we grew apart. I guess I'm a different type of personality to what she is. I'm very vibrant, energetic, hyper, talkative, bubbly. I think these days she's more serene and peaceful, family orientated, got kids. And so I still see her on Facebook, like her posts. I don't really see her, usually her posts. And with one of my other school friends, and they go out together and have photographs, and it looks like they like country walks and stuff, but they both got kids, they got things to relate to. And it both looks like they like scenic, peaceful walks, but I'm not really into that. So, you know, and I spoke to her about it and she's like, oh, it's not you, it's me. I'm like this with everyone. But clearly she's not like this with everyone because she can go out with her other friend. But that's fine. I just realised that me and her have come to an end in terms of that type of friendship, you know, and some people change and you just drift apart and you have to accept it because it's more painful if you carry on, you know, and it's just no go because you're not compatible anymore. So yeah, I had to let that go. It was weird, but I did the right thing because I've just got friendships now with people who really value my work, who want to talk to me, who want to speak to me, who want to spend time with me. I never feel like they don't want to talk to me. You know, I never feel like I'm in the way or I never feel devalued. Whereas when I went round there, I just felt that she didn't value my worth enough. And so I've kind of dropped the only friendship now that didn't value my worth. And so, you know, I've had to change myself, if you like. I've had to realize that some people as friends you have to let go, you know, even if you've known them for years, because you change, people change and do move on. And so that was kind of a big change for me because I just thought, you know, if she's not valuing worth, Sandra, what's the point in going over there feeling like you're, you know, that you're doing all the work and that, you know, that she's not really appreciating and valuing you. She's not really like wanting you to be there and talk to her and really into you, into you as a friend, like as in talking a lot to you and what you're doing. She did take an interest, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like going through emotion. You kind of like feel that I'm really hyper. It's how I felt. I'm hyper, energetic, bubbly, and she doesn't really want that type of person around her because it's not who she is. She's not. I think she was more like that when we were younger because we used to go to youth club together. So we used to go dancing together. And she used to be more like type of person, I would say. But, you know, things changed. She's got kids. And so it's just different. And because she stuck up for me with bullying, I felt like I really had to be there for her, you know, to kind of pay her back. But now I just know that I paid my dues. She lost her partner. He was very young. And so he died. And she had a really traumatic time with that for about 18 months. And I went sometimes occasionally and comforted her and stuff, and she really needed me there that time. So I kind of feel I've paid that back now. There's nothing left to pay back, and we have to just have, you know, she's still my Facebook friend. She can see posts if she wants. Sometimes she likes them. She's a lovely person, but we're just not right for each other in terms of friendship anymore. And sometimes we have to do that. We have to change and move on and realize, you know, there are also these people that go out of your life that will come back in it one day, you know, and there's people who come in your life that won't ever come back in your life, you know. There's people that are temporary in life for a short period of time, people are temporary for a long period of time, and people who never ever leave, you know, because they're always there for you through thick and thin, you know. I can count my good friends, my best friends on one hand, my good friends probably still on one hand. You know, but you know, you've just got to understand that whatever change, whether you're making changes in your life, they're making changes in their life, you need to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's your motivation for doing it. If you haven't got a big enough why, you won't succeed, right? Like, for example, I write books. I've been writing my Asexual Guide to Sex book since June 2019. Is it easy because the book's gone on for so long? Not in that way, no, but it's easy because I love writing. But I haven't even been able to work on my book this month. That's very frustrating for me. I'm quite disappointed in myself, but I've been doing loads of legal work. I mean, it's been a lot. And then I've had this upset recently. And so, you know, I've got to give myself a break, you know. And so it's hard because I really want to get back into my book as soon as possible, you know. So there are, you know, I became very patient I don't know if I've always been patient, but I consciously became aware that I was a very patient person years ago, and that I will definitely finish this book and I will do whatever I set my mind to if I really want to do it and enjoy it. And so my why is because for writing is because I love writing books. It changed lives. I love the written word. It's like therapy. So if I'm doing it for 2.5 years at the moment, 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years, it'll be nearly 3 years soon. So yeah, nearly 3 years. But because it's like therapy for my soul, it's just like having 3 years of therapy, because writing is like my therapy. And so, it's good in that way. And so I've got a big enough why. I've got a reason to continue to do that. Plus, I love helping asexuals so much. Like, it's one of my most joyous things in my whole entire life. Asexuals are amazing, brilliant, unique, special. You're just gorgeous, and we're so different and we're so unique and we're so incredible. And I love being asexual. I love this channel. I think it's very different to other channels. I just feel at home here and at peace with my soul, like chatting to you. And I just really, really do love helping asexuals. I keep repeating myself because I love it so much. But I have changed myself to be on this channel. So prior to starting this channel in October 2015, I was so shy about talking about sex or anything to do with it at all. And now I'm writing a book called Asexual Guide to Sex. It's a complete shift, right? So in order to do that, I had to break through my fears and boundaries. I had to come on here and then think, oh God, I'm going to have to share some of my sexual experiences, because, asexuality, although it's like a lack of sexual attraction and there's a lot of asexuals that don't have sex, we come to realize, some of us, that we are asexual through our sexual experiences, or we can contrast and compare our sexual experiences to what we actually truly desire, want, and need. And so there has to be a point where you are talking really about sex some of the time. And so this was very shocking for me. I'm like, oh my God, but I'm so shy. I don't want to talk about it, because it's like, I don't talk about that with anyone, not even my best female friend. What am I going to do? And I just all of a sudden thought, which I still think today, you cannot take this stuff to the grave with you. If I take it to the grave with me, who's going to benefit from it? No one. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I made a conscious decision to say lots of stuff. I've told you more on this channel tonight than you've probably ever heard about my abusive ex and stuff. I'm it's not great talking about him, but at the end of the day, I have been through quite a lot of stuff, and I don't have any fear about sharing it, because I wasn't one who behaved like that. And at the end of the day, people need to understand that some people don't change, and some people do try and make themselves look good through having therapy, which they don't really want to actually make an intrinsic real change. That's what happened with him. He's just wore it like a badge of honor. Look what I'm doing. Like, ego thing, you don't want to be with a guy like that. But I want you to know that happens, because you wouldn't have thought it. Because even in personal and professional development, we're always taught that a person who is developing, growing themselves, who is trying to change themselves, getting some therapy and stuff like that, it's always for the good. It's always kind of improve themselves, And so that's kind of what you're led to believe. And it's a shocker when you find out there are guys like that in the world who just literally wear it like a badge of honor, for their ego, so they'll feel so super important, and like they're just a bee's knees, they're just so great because they're doing that, rather than actually wanting to do the work because they realize they've got a problem and they need to sort it out, and they're ashamed of their behavior and they want to change it. So you have to bear all these things in mind. I know I've covered so much in this live stream. I mean, it's nearly an hour and 50 minutes long. I've talked about a lot to do with, do people really truly change? There are some that do, but I would say they're more likely few and far between. I think there's a lot of people in the personal and professional development world that do change. Do you see? I think personal and professional development people, they're about 1% again of the population, 1 to 3%, I think it is, who want to change themselves. So again, you're talking to a minority again, so yeah, it's kind of like, you just gotta understand that a lot of people fundamentally don't want to change. It's uncomfortable. They don't want to admit they've got a problem. Again, ego driven, and they're not doing it for the right reasons. Like, if someone says, I'm going to change, so say someone's a liar or a cheat in a relationship, and they say they're going to change, they ain't going to change, aren't going to change, unless they realise that cheating and lying's bad. The only reason they'll say they're changing is because they want to keep the relationship with you going and still carry on the bad behaviour, right? So they've got to actually think, God, I hate cheating, it's disgusting, it makes me feel miserable, unhappy, unworthy, I feel bad about myself, I don't want to be doing this, you know? So I need to get some help, stop bad habits and being led astray by people. I need to be able to be taught how to put boundaries in place, how to say no to advances, how to like not be flirty with people, so they don't get the wrong impression, you know, and know how to deal with those situations better, you know. It's completely different mindsets. And so, you know, you've really, really got to ask yourself, is the person actually really going to change? If you want to give them benefit of doubt, that's fine, but you could end up getting hurt more and more, and that's the risk you have to take, you know, if you're gonna still stay around with them. But some people, you just need to leave their life and make sure they try to change on their own. And like I said, you're talking years, you're not talking a few months, you're talking years, you know. They would need at least 2 years, really. 2 to 5 years, I would say, for most people to make some lasting change, at least a couple of years. Obviously, trauma, like I said, trauma can make people change. There might be some instant changes, but even if there's some instant changes, they've still got a lot of other stuff surrounding that they haven't dealt with, if you know what I mean. So, for example, in 2014, I'm just going to have a bit of water quickly. In 2014, I, as far as I was concerned, stopped being depressed. And that was very quickly because I got fibromyalgia, and I was diagnosed in January 2012 fibromyalgia. It's a chronic pain condition that affects the nerves and muscles of the body. I have it forever. You can't cure it. It is the way it is, right? That was devastating, as you can imagine. Really, really upsetting for me. And I was just like in bits. And then took me 6 months to come to terms with the fact I've got a disability for life. And then when I did, I just worked out that the more I said negative stuff to myself, the more it would cause me physical pain. And so I stopped doing that almost instantly, but I still didn't feel great about myself until I didn't have self-love until I went to a business event towards the end of the year. I think it was September, October time. And then I saw the world leading coach Tony Robbins, and I realized from the different speakers on the stage with all the skills I had to offer others, and I felt valued and worth something in life for the first time ever. And that was truly life-changing for me. So that whole year of 2012, those 2 incidents, they completely changed my life. Plus, I'd split up, well, this ex had split with me the year before. So this was a year without him, although in the January he was still hovering around my place. So he was still purposely hovering around my place. But I managed to stop that by what I said. It put him off me. It's great. Because I had guinea pigs, and I told you earlier he was jealous of guinea pigs. So kind of like, and I have fibromyalgia, and he had something wrong with him, but I had something worse wrong with me forever. My disability's forever. So he didn't like that. He couldn't stand it. So he had to be the one who was sicker all the time. So stuff like that, which is very weird. Not good. Got good mindset. Anyway, you know, so I changed for the better. So sometimes you can have a traumatic event. It does change you quite quickly. But I still had to, you know, I still had to maintain that. Like, okay, you stop talking negatively to yourself, but you still got to maintain that. You've got to make sure that you stop talking negatively to yourself consistently, persistently over time. You stop thinking negative thoughts, you know? And so you have to, like what I say, create a happy list. I created this years ago, which is like at least 10 things that make me happy. And if I'm doing some of those every single day, then I'm going to maintain my happiness. If not, my happiness is going to stop dropping down. I'm more likely to go to depressive thoughts again. So I've got to maintain those things on the happy list, right? So it's constantly like a change is constantly like a muscle that you need to keep working out, like going to the gym. If you want to, you know, like create true and lasting change, you have to consciously all the time steer yourself and drive yourself in the right direction and not let yourself go off on roads down alleyways and stuff, if you know what I mean, and the wrong direction. To keep yourself on track all the time. I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. If you have, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you. Ariana Jade, lovely to see you. Liam, lovely to see you. My Life, lovely to see you. Thank you for everyone that's taken part in chat tonight. I really appreciate you being here. Hope you found value from this live stream. If you have, and even if you're watching it on replay, please give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for the thumbs up already. Don't forget to share it with anyone you think may need to hear it or benefit from it. Don't forget to give this, like I said, video thumbs up. Already said that. But thumbs up is so important because it gets the algorithm working on YouTube, more visibility on asexual videos. It's always a win-win. And then, yeah, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe. And then hit that bell icon to get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. Don't forget to subscribe because I love hearing from my community here. Lots of love to you all and take care. Bye. Bye. Lovely to see you. Bye.